Did you ever, you talked about seeing the defendant's cell phone on July 14th. Did you ever see that cell phone again?
Yes.
And when was the next time you saw that cell phone?
Your Honor, I would object not in your...
Do you want to state your objection for the record?
I do, Your Honor. I believe that what they're going to attempt to elicit is something about Mr. Cooper handing a phone to his lawyer at a custody hearing at some later date. It has no relevance to this thing, but the implication is that the lawyers were doing something wrong or there was something improper in it. It has no relevance, and if it has any relevance, it's vastly outweighed by any unfair prejudicial effect. It has nothing to do with the charge of murder.
Your Honor, to give you a proffer of what the evidence will be, I believe that Mr. Fedorov will say that he came to the first appearance and saw Mr. Kurtz hand that cell phone to the defendant's mother. And that's a cell phone that the Cary Police Department had to track down. The defendant said in their opening the Cary Police Department were corrupt and dishonest about this case. And now that they've made a huge issue about the quality of the investigation of that cell phone, a cell phone that came back from the FBI deleted. This is incredibly probative on this issue.
First of all, that's flat out wrong. He knows that they busted through to try to get the password. They messed up the phone, the FBI. And the second thing is, how is it improper to suggest that Mr. Kurtz handing the phone to the defendant's mother has anything to do with the Cary Police Department? When they arrested Mr. Cooper, they could have seized the phone. They could have done any of that, and they did. What the implication is to try to put some stain with the jury with Mr. Kurtz. What's the relevance to the charge of first-degree murder here?
Your Honor,
Well, you called into question the chain of custody on that particular piece of item of evidence.
Not that piece of evidence we did.
Your Honor, by Mr. Trinkle's own admission, he just said that I know the FBI is the one who deleted that phone. I have no evidence
Excuse
of
me,
that.
strike me. What I meant is they were the ones that messed up the password.
And Your Honor, Your Honor, there's zero evidence of that. The evidence is that the FBI investigated that phone. They had to get past I believe it was a first password, and then they came to this 32-digit security system that there's been evidence of that they then had to go back to Cisco and try to get a code to get into this 32-digit security system. Cisco finally provided that password, and they were able to get into it, and lo and behold, the phone is erased. And that is something that we have the right to examine, and I think that's very probative, especially when, if there had been no issue about the cell phone in this case, if that hadn't been an issue at all, we'd be in a different ballgame. But they said that the Cary Police Department was corrupt and dishonest, and the chain of custody on that phone starts on July 12th. Somebody has it on July 12th. And then what we know is that on October 26th, Mr. Kurtz has it and gives it to the defendant's mother, and we don't get it for a couple days later.
Well, first of all, as far as getting into the phone, there was a communication with Mr. Cummings in which we offered a certain procedure to attempt to get into the phone, and which was turned down. Okay? We've got an email to follow that up. But that has absolutely nothing to do with this. We didn't challenge the chain of custody on this particular phone. And
I thought y'all had challenged it.
we didn't challenge the chain of custody on this phone. They said they picked it up from Brad's, that was next to Brad's mother, next to her purse on the counter is where they got the phone.
Your Honor, we have to prove chain of custody because there's no stipulation to it. I'd also take issue with, I mean, it's preposterous to me to argue that they're not challenging the chain of custody of this phone. You've heard that there's been evidence question to Jim Young after question about where was this kept, where was this evidence kept? Couldn't somebody have tampered with this? Couldn't somebody have tampered with that? And they said Ms. Cooper's phone, Ms. Cooper's old phone, this phone that we're talking about, this Samsung. We have to prove why that phone was deleted. I mean, it is extremely probative on this issue to show that Jim Young looked at that phone, saw 3 call entries on the morning of July 12th, and we get it back from the FBI after it's finally been unlocked and it's been deleted. And it's been in someone else's possession in between the time that Mr. Cooper had it and we had it. I understand that there's a stain that comes with it, but that is far outweighed by the probative value of this phone. I mean, this phone, the fact that the defendant, which I would say that the evidence supports that the defendant or someone close to the defendant deleted that phone, that is extremely probative to covering up what happened in this murder. And to say that we can't talk about what happened to that phone over some dates, but they're allowed to talk about what happened to the phone over different dates is extremely unfair.
They talked a lot about what happened to the phone and insinuated a lot. They could have seized the phone on July 16th. They didn't. They did seize the phone after he was arrested. And as far as chain of custody, the phone is actually already in evidence. So the chain of custody isn't an issue here. It's already in evidence.
Moreover, Judge, I'm actually looking right now at the report that the FBI did on the phone where there are clearly items on the phone. the phone has not been deleted, as Mr. Zellinger is representing to the court. And it is absolutely dishonest
I don't
to
think
make
he
this
insinuated that they
representation.
deleted it or that it was deleted wiped clean, that there were certain things not there.
I mean, how many contacts are on the phone?
Well, I've heard enough of this whole argument. In my discretion, I'm going to allow that line of questioning through this witness. It is probative, it is relevant, and I've considered Rule 403 if you'll bring the jury in.
But I would like to add, before he brings the jury in,
Go ahead.
I would also include that I believe this is a violation of my client's Fifth and Sixth and 14th Amendments right to a fair trial, his right to an attorney, and his right to due process and the corresponding North Carolina constitutional provisions.
If the evidence is that he saw Brad Cooper hand the phone to somebody and hand it to him.
That's not what he's saying. He's saying that he saw Mr. Kurtz hand it to Brad's mom. He's not saying anything about Mr. Cooper.
That's correct, and I apologize if I
Okay,
confused
well, I
words.
misunderstood it then.
But it's Mr. Kurtz handing it to the defendant's mother.
That's my concern.
You've attacked every other aspect of what happened to every piece of evidence in this case. It's probative, it's relevant. I'm going to allow it if you'll bring in the jury.
Do you document that's identified for, that's numbered for identification purposes, State's Exhibit 551? This is an email that you sent Detective Dismukes.
Yes.
And does that email refresh your memory as to what you saw when you saw that cell phone again?
Yep.
You saw that cell phone again at that hearing. Whose possession was it in?
The first time I saw it, it was in, I'm not sure what, Mr. Kurtz's name, he had it.
Okay, and where did you see the cell phone go?
He handed it to who I assumed was Brad's mother.
Okay. When you turned it on, what were you able to see with that phone?
It requested a PIN number, which I did not have.
Okay. So after that PIN number, what did you do next?
I couldn't really unlock the phone without the PIN number, so I removed the SIM card, subscriber identity module, and read the SIM card with her computer.
Like, what do these settings mean that you found in this?
What is that?
What did you find in the SIM card regarding?
This SIM card did not contain any SMS messages.
Okay. So after you couldn't find any material on the SIM card, did you have occasion to try to get into the actual phone's data?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened when you tried to get into the phone data?
All right, there was connected it to another computer, which was supposed to be able to bypass the pass phone password. And as soon as tried to bypass the password, it went into a much higher level of security.
Okay. And is that reflected in your report in some pictures?
Yes.
Okay. This picture, what are we looking at in this picture?
This shows a third-party protective software which was in the phone.
In all your training experience, did you ever come across this encryption program?
Right, it's an encrypted program, and it went into, instead of asking for the 4-letter PIN, it asked for 32-character alphanumeric code.
Okay. Eventually, did someone supply you with the code that goes in that box?
Yes, they did.
And who was that?
That was Detective
Was it-
Jim Young.
Okay. And he gave you that 32-digit code?
Yes,
Did you enter that 32-digit code into this shield?
yes, I did.
Okay. And after you did that, were you able to access some of the phone's data?
So that unlocked the phone so I could look at whatever was in the phone.
Okay. And at that point, were you able to generate this phone report?
Yeah, I connected the phone to a computer and used a program we call Celebrite to download what was in the phone.
You said that based on the fact that there's there's some text, there's some pictures and movies, but there's no call log and there's no contacts. Are you able to discern what happened to those?
There's two possibilities on the call history. One is that the user of the phone told it to delete the call history. The call history is normally deleted when you switch SIM cards also.
But the fact that Cisco was able to give you that number made it clear to you that it was in fact a Cisco system.
Yes, that's correct.
And did you at any point look for web or data history on the phone for July 12th?
No, I did not.
Were you asked to?
No.
You were asked to look at the lifetime of that phone. I believe it's previously been testified that the lifetime of that phone was 31 minutes. Could you explain to the jury how a phone goes from being used every day to displaying it only having 31 minutes of lifetime use?
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of the 31 minutes of lifetime.
Okay. If a phone had, previous witness had testified to that material, if you saw a phone had 31 minutes of lifetime use, and you have phone records that show hours and days and days and days of use, what conclusion would you make about what happened to that phone in between the time that all those calls were made and that there's the 31 minutes of use?
Normally, you would think it would be reset, although some phones you can tell if it had been reset, but if it only had showed 31 minutes of lifetime use, then I would say that it had been reset.
Okay. And are you able to see where it notes whether or not there is a previous reset on the phone?
With regard to data calls, it says no previous reset.
With respect to last reset?
It said no previous reset.
And then with respect to lifetime calls,
It's pretty hard to read. It looks like 31 minutes.
if
And
you,
something.
how many groupings of numbers are there?
It looks like 31, probably 31 hours, 13 minutes and 7 seconds.
Are you able to read all of the text?
Just please try to speak up so that the court reporter and the jury can hear any questions and
I think I
answers.
can read nearly all of it anyway.
Thank you very much. Zillinger asked you a bunch of questions about the 32-digit number that he had shown up on the screen. Do you know what that number is?
The number is to the unlock code, basically a recovery unlock code that our IT guys gave.
And the reason that you use a code like that is if you don't have the PIN, correct?
It's to unlock the Credent Mobile Guardian software on there. Yes,
Unlocks it if you don't have the regular password.
that's correct.
So there's nothing about that 32-digit number that implies that Mr. Cooper had a phone set up so that you had to put in 32 numbers
No.
to get into his cell phone.
No, that's correct.